Come Together by the Beatles. Never was there a better example of a song where you listen to it and think, this is a bunch of random hip jargon words strung together with a hook that has nothing to do conceptually with the verses. In that sense, perhaps the main theme of the song may be the question of, do song lyrics and messages actually matter? Deconstruction, and particularly deconstructing the known and the popular and subverting the expectations of the status quo, fits in neatly with the Beatles' image at the time, and the pop song format is a perfect mark for the Love Generation's vanguard messengers. This motive is certainly an element of Come Together's meaning. For a groundbreaking rock band renowned for some of the finest pop songwriting the world has ever seen, this may seem like a lazy approach, but upon closer examination, it may be nothing of the sort. It is safe to say that the lyrics, as exponents of psychedelic culture, are more intended to be evocative rather than strictly interpreted with a straightforward unified message. A song such as this suggests the drug trip, with myriad kaleidoscopic subjective interpretations flowing freely from the word choices in their organization. Interpretation, then, can only be to say that certain selections may or may not evoke certain themes. Irish author James Joyce, often considered among the most groundbreaking and meticulous authors of the end of modernist literature, produced a similar effect with his puzzling masterpiece, Finnegan's Wake, which departed from the considerably more straight-ahead approach of its predecessor, Ulysses. Finnegan's Wake appears to be the free associated ravings of an intellectually gifted madman. However, the text bears itself to endless analysis and interpretation. Nearly every word and phrase of this book suggests associations and puns across multiple languages, including aspects of the author's personal narrative, references to Irish culture and personalities, allusions to his other works, and the entire realms of literature, philosophy, culture, and the arts. On the one hand, this massive 1,000-page tome can be viewed as total nonsense, but likely the author's intent was to create something extremely deliberate that could divulge endless layers of meaning to practically anyone, whether that meaning was intended or unintended. As literature, Finnegan's Wake is fundamentally deconstructionist in nature, suggesting that perhaps the role of an author is not to directly tell you what is meant, but to create an artifact that most perfectly has the capability of revealing something ineffable and mysterious to an audience that even the author can't anticipate. One could make a similar comment about the films of David Lynch. Clearly, whether conscious or unconscious to the creator, something is meant by this work. There are guiding principles, most often mirroring the unpacking of the subtle realm, the creator's own psyche. In all three of these cases, and in most great literature of this category, we most often can pin down a clear, uniting message or theme, a spirit to the work, and whether such analysis clarifies a subliminal artistic intention or totally misses the point will forever remain in the eye of the beholder. One observation that we can make is that the finished Come Together song was recorded over the course of numerous 4-track recording sessions, and in each version, the lyrics are slightly modified through on-the-spot improvisation. This would suggest that many associations may be arising subconsciously rather than through deliberate intention. The song itself, as we will see, seems to criticize logical left brain and individual egoic expressions, while on many levels seeming to conform to them. Regarding the song as a whole in its historical context, we can say that Come Together is a phrase picked from the I Ching, used as a campaign slogan for Timothy Leary's 1969 run for governor in the state of California, which was demolished as he was imprisoned for possession of marijuana, and the opportunity was seized by Ronald Reagan, resulting in history as we know it. The earliest and quite different version of Come Together written for this purpose was the intellectual property of Leary, resulting in him feeling ripped off by the Beatles, including a successful rewrite in their Abbey Road LP. According to Lennon, the updated version was created in the studio, inspired by Chuck Berry's You Can't Catch Me. The song has many lyrics in common, including,
"Here come a flat top, he was moving up with me, then come waving goodbye and a little old blue dove jitty. I put my foot in my tank and I'll be..."
and an identical melody to the first several lines of the verses. In fact, Lennon was sued for plagiarism in a decidedly petty case, resulting in a settlement that involved both small monetary compensation and actual classic rock song recordings for Chuck Berry's publishers. Over me. At the end of the chorus is also a reference to rock legend Elvis Presley, who ended many hooks with "over you." Finally, in the intro riff, the tape echoey vocal line that sounds like "shkataku" is actually Lennon saying "shoot me" into his hands while clapping, a line repeated from the abandoned track Watching Rainbows. I need not curate to you how creepy this coincidence seems in retrospect. Naturally, the internet is overflowing with hidden Easter eggs in the Beatles catalog suggesting mystical portents, synchronicities, and conspiracy theory. It is difficult to analyze Come Together without acknowledging that the most cohesive interpretation for the lyrics is that it is a self-reference concerning the state of the Beatles as a group and as individuals at the time from John Lennon's perspective. Lennon is the more haughty, forceful, and precocious personality of the Beatles, in a way that is decidedly both cuttingly forthright and charming. However, the song that we actually hear differs substantially from the Come Together offered to Timothy Leary, and also from Lennon's original vision, which had a brisker pace and relied more heavily upon Chuck Berry. How would it have fared without the signature bass figure, the distinctive tom triplets, slanky lead guitar passages, and overall swampy boogie feel? As usual, the contributions of each band member's instrumentation and taste create a composition which is considerably more than the sum of its parts, which ironically also serves as the best interpretation of the lyrics. George Harrison is likely the Joker who does what he pleases, suggesting his overall aloof and utilitarian character. He did have long hair that likely approached his knees as he sat in meditation. Flat top is again a reference to Chuck Berry's guitar, not the hip-hop hairstyle. Juju is slang for spiritual energy, and so the Juju eyeball is likely a reference to George's third eye chakra and his commitment to Eastern pranic spiritual practices, resulting in an overall holy roller character who grooves slowly. Holy roller not in the sense of Methodist and evangelical tendencies to speak in tongues and jubilant faith healings, but more in the sense of being monk-like and rolling as in rock and rolling. I'm pretty sure rolling was not slang for ecstasy at the time. The most obscure verse, we can assume by process of elimination that this verse refers to Ringo Starr. Let's face it, he kinda looks like a monkey playing the drum kit. No offense, peace and love. No shoe shine, toe jam football, and one thing I can tell you is you got to be free, all serve to depict a humble and disheveled, unpretentious character. Shooting Coca-Cola might suggest that while there are bad drugs out there, Ringo keeps it cool with a simple Scotch and Coke. Bag production is one of John and Yoko's businesses, so the penultimate verse is likely about John. Having feet below the knee could be practically anyone, but maybe to suggest a solid personal foundation of self-confidence, tapping out the rhythm as he sings. While not a chiropractor, spinal cracker might refer to as being a white guy with a solid backbone. It may refer to the automobile injury he suffered around this time, and it may simply refer to his relatively pushy and direct style of leadership and communication, being at odds with Paul. Being an armchair critic or psychologist suggests a hobbyist, and this is to say that John wears his interests on his sleeve, and you can feel his disease in that he communicates his ideas and interests, as well as his emotional reality, quite clearly and assertively in his personality, his lyrics, and his style of musicianship. The walrus appears many times in Beatles lyrics, inspired by the poem The Walrus and the Carpenter in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. John is quoted as saying that he was shocked to learn that the beloved walrus was the bad guy of the tale. If we start discussing the walrus, we may end up embarking down a rabbit hole there is no returning from. John both sings I Am the Walrus and appears in the walrus outfit in its Magical Mystery Tour music video. It is safe to say that the line in Glass Onion stating, "The walrus was Paul," was being deliberately obtuse. In the same video, we see the Beatles sitting on a wall wearing small rubber boots, also known as rubbers, Wellingtons, wellies, or gum boots. Connecting the dots, perhaps if Paul is somewhat of a storm cloud, then John has his own methodical form of protection from getting his socks drenched in negativity, regardless of who the walrus, or the bad guy, actually is. The final verse is the zinger. This one veers into the petty and mean-spirited, with early warning potentially being slang for bad breath. Muddy Waters was a bluesman who influenced the Beatles, coupled with Mojo Filter, to suggest an overall melancholic and suppressive influence. In a larger sense, this character might muddy the waters of the band's dynamic collective energy. Helter Skelter was a Paul song about a roller coaster. A likely double meaning is again a dig on Paul's character, that a passive attitude and introversion may be creating unexpected turbulence, as it is so hard to see what is going on with this guy, whose greatest asset is that he is good-looking, or presentable and attractive, but perhaps lacking in integrity and true personal depth. John may be saying that his own individualistic and genuine personality is at odds with the more conformist and image-driven style of Paul. As a result, 1 and 1 and 1 is 3, which is quite logical, but means that one of the 4 Beatles stands apart. Or maybe it means that Paul was killed in an auto accident and replaced with a body double. Come Together, like many late Beatles songs, stands as an emblem of green meme perspectives, embodying postmodern deconstruction and casual mystical psychedelia, and almost certainly heavy self-reference. Rather than seeing this as a vestige of the apparent narcissism of these filthy rich, world-class green meme superstars and cultural leaders, it may be more apt to view this inward-looking approach as a breaking of the fourth wall and an acknowledgement of interior quadrants underlying authorial intent. The lyrics overall suggest a description of each Beatle in each verse, with the hook "Come Together Over Me" suggesting again that the Beatles are more significant as a collaborative group than as individuals. At the same time, the specific tone of the verses, as well as stories of these recording sessions themselves, suggest the group's division, from John's perspective, was arising from Paul McCartney's personality issues. So, while the song's uniting refrain implores the world and the Beatles and love to come together as one, the verses come through as divisive and critical of the band as individuals, and particularly Paul as seen by John. One gets the sense that John believes that resolution is reached through confrontation, while Paul's role as humble peacekeeper is actually a dishonest and passive-aggressive obstacle to collective thriving. One may note that if Paul provided any harmony or backing vocals distinctive of the Beatles at every point in their career, it is only captured incidentally by instrumental mics, and that the electric piano figure is played by John, who is considerably weaker than Paul at the keyboard. It may also be worthy of note that the band did ultimately fail to come together, and were unable to afford the intellectual property rights to this very song throughout most of its enormous success. As a result, it is a popular cover tune by artists ranging from Lennon's own solo band, Ike and Tina Turner, my own Subway employee band called Cold Cut Trio, which you're hearing now, then owner Michael Jackson, to, Godsmack. The hook is often used as a sample by rappers, and the catchy tune frequently appears in advertisements by major corporations.